Viewers in the gallery and viewers online, thank you very much for joining us this morning to our General Council meeting, the 1st of November, or the first meeting for November. Councillors, we have some apologies. We have a leave of absence that's been granted to Councillor Cypher and Councillor Daniels. Would someone move that we accept their apologies? Moved by Councillor Curtis, seconded Councillor Carpenter. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. I suspect Councillor Burns will be here momentarily. He did advise us of his motor vehicle problems the last few days, so let's hope that he's not stranded somewhere, but he should join us shortly. On that note, councillors, leave of absence is required going forward. Is anyone needing a date? Not needing a date, but needing a date not to attend the meeting. All good? Thank you, councillors. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet here today, the Western Kungaloo people, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Councillors, as you know, at the first council meeting of each month, we have a member of the churches together that come and lead us off to start our day, and we don't want to load them up with any other responsibility than a kind prayer and perhaps some words, but it really is appreciated sometimes the sharing and the mentorship that the opportunity presents, and clearly it's an opportunity for our community to see the value we place very much on, certainly on our secularism in terms of our sharing, and the fact that we have a community that is very much together, and Father Truck is here from at the parish here, the Catholic parish of Central Queensland, or Central Highlands, or Emerald. If I want to, I guess, drill down to his jurisdiction. I know Father has often instructed us about the pronunciation of his name, which is Father Truck, and he has made mention of that on a few occasions that we've met with him to make sure we get that right. Father Truck, thank you very much for coming this morning. And councillors, if you don't mind, at the end of our prayer, we might just get together with Father Truck and get our photo taken with him, so as a memento of his joining us for the meeting today. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Kerry. Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to be here with you today. Actually, it is my second time in this building. I was with you at the luncheon one time last year, and then I'm asked to come here. I thought with other churches coming together, but it's good that I know the system now is not that. But one of the most things that I really love in this town is the collaboration between churches together and then the council. I did not experience like something like this in other places, especially back home. I am Vietnamese. As you know, in communist country, no way that religious can work with the government. And then I was working as a missionary in Thailand for 7 years, and it's better in terms of the government, but there's no such thing like this. So I'm really, really blessed to be here with you and really enjoyed it. And this is a lovely town. The collaboration between the people is amazing. So once again, thank you, and thank you for inviting me here for the opening prayer today. Let us start in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I'd like to read the Gospel reading of the day today from Luke chapter 17, verses 11 to 19. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered one of the villages, 10 lepers came to meet him. They stood some way off and called to him, "Jesus, Master, take pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go and show yourself to the priests." Now, as they were going away, they were cleansed. Finding himself cured, One of them turned back, praising God at the top of his voice, and threw himself at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. The man was a Samaritan. This made Jesus say, "Were not all 10 made clean? The other 9, where are they?" It seems that no one has come back to give praise to God except this foreigner. And he said to the man, "Stand up, go to your way. Your faith has saved you." Yes, my dear friends, as you can see that 10 lepers was healed, but only one came back to give praise and thanks to God, and he is an outcast, a so-called pagans. And the other one, like a Jew, supposed to be chosen people, supposed to be good people, giving praise and thanks to God, but they did not. I'm wondering whether we have ever had the same kind of attitude like the 9 lepers there. I came from many different countries, working in Thailand, in Myanmar, in poor country, many poor countries, that Vanuatu here and there. I can see that we are so blessed to be here in this rich, peaceful, wealthy country. We have almost everything that we need. However, other people in other countries, in Africa, in developing or poor country, they work very hard, but they may not have like an essential thing like a food, drink, warm clothes. Many people are dying every day of poverty and hunger. And some kids even not having the chance to go to school. So we are so blessed to be here in this country and in this town too, very peaceful town. I'm wondering whether we are thankful people. Have we ever thanked God for the grace that we have received? Just reflect a bit on that, and hopefully we will be more opening people, like open heart and mind, and more generous in approaching in the way that we deal with the people, especially those who we are serving. So let us pray. Loving God, we give you thanks and praise for the grace that you have granted us. Especially, you give us a special gift to live in this beautiful country, and especially here in Emerald. As we gather here as members of the council, we ask you to be with us, to bless us, so whatever we share, we discuss, and we plan will be good for the people, those whom we are serving, and most of all, for your glorification. We ask this through Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father Truck. We might make this space available here, councillors, and we might just come and get this photograph with Father.
Yeah. I'm wondering whether I can put it in the Facebook of the parish.
You may.
I'll take that for you. I'll take a photo for you. This person, which type of thing?
You're going to place yourself right here in the middle. This is
Go back or not? Here's some power.
I got told last night, stand like you love them.
What's that stand like what?
Oh, well, we were all trying to scrunch up and they said, come on, stand like you love the next person.
That's pretty good, Father, if you want to check that.
Yes, oh, very good.
Good.
Yeah, good. Thank you,
very
and all
much.
the best with the meeting.
Well, we'll
Thank you.
we'll see you before Christmas
Yes,
when you
yeah.
come with the churches, yeah.
I told them that is the rehearsal for the luncheon.
Yes, there.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Guilty sin. No, guilty.
All right, councillors. Certainly a sense of irony, isn't it, when listening to Father Truck's message there and having, I guess, the one of the 10 coming back to thank for something, and I guess as councillors we know how that feels sometimes, but we are certainly grateful for it. So, councillors, we get back to our agenda and the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, which was our council meeting of the 20th of October. Councillor, would someone like to move those, please? Moved by Councillor Carpenter, seconded by Councillor Brimblecombe. We'll just check those as we normally do, just if that's an accurate record of how you see things happening. Everyone happy with those? All right, councillors, they've been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Any business arising out of those? A question maybe? Councillors, generally the resolutions or I guess discussions are usually recorded in the outstanding meeting actions, and there's been a very good correlation between, I guess, recording of those and the activities from them. We'll get to those in a moment. But any business arising? All good? Thank you, councillors. The review of those outstanding meeting actions, is there anything in there that you don't think is proceeding well, or there's a message there or an update that you wanted to ask a question about? And bearing in mind, councillor, some of our other discussions and meetings add some, usually some substance to some of those updates as well. So I think we're pretty pleased with the way that obviously our reactions to resolutions and those directions are coming through. So thank you to everyone. Councillors.
Oh, excuse me, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor. Sorry. Mr. Mayor, at the last meeting I asked about, and maybe it's gone to a strategy on the list for the strategy, but have some discussions around minimal social infrastructure requirements for communities. I know it's just something that we mentioned last council meeting, just to have a look at as a council, and what, if there is any, or if what that means for us as a region.
I don't think it's been captured somewhere in the meeting action. So is it something we need to get onto that agenda, Councillor Moriarty, on the upcoming agenda items?
Yeah, if we could have that go to a strategy meeting, that would be really good.
All right, so you've recorded that? Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moriarty. Anything else on that agenda, upcoming agenda items? And what Janice has just spoken about there is the process. If there's something you think we need to get on there, and it can be today or it can be any time, just obviously make it known to the CEO or the GMs, or certainly myself or Deputy Mayor Christine to have come up on those agendas. Council, conflicts of interest. Anything to declare before the meeting today? I don't believe anything's been made aware to you, acting CEO or EO? No, all right. Well, and as I said, consultation even happens today within the meeting and within the agenda. If there's something that people are uncomfortable with, they can make a declaration at that time, and we can pause and actually adequately reflect that. Councillors, petitions, none, Mr. Acting CEO? Yep. Okay, we get into our decision action reports. Our first one is 12.3 that comes under the hand of General Manager Michelle Webb of Customer and Commercial Services, and that relates to the property in Juringa. I'll hand over to Michelle to lead us off today. Thank you, Michelle.
Good morning. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, councillors. Councillors, this is a report, and you'll be aware of some other reports that we brought to the previous meetings of council. In regards to this forms part of the process of disposal of old staff housing assets, where we have been successful in securing the exception from the Minister, being able to negotiate directly with long-serving staff and tenants within council housing for us to be able to negotiate directly with them for the disposal of that property. So I'm very pleased today to bring before you a report in regards to the disposal of 23 King Street at Doringa to our employee Adam Turner. Adam Turner has worked for council for 15 years, I probably suggest most of his working life, and has been a resident of Doringa for some 33 years. So Adam performs a very important role for council in Doringa as a community support officer and very much a conduit for the office that we have within Doringa. The report before you sets out the requirements required. The recommendation sets out the provisions required from the Minister in regards to our ability to dispose of the property directly to Adam, and that recommendation is there before you, councillors. Happy to take any questions.
Right, councillors, as General Manager Michelle has said, this is number 6, Michelle? A bit more?
Maybe not 6, maybe 4 or 5.
5, okay.
4 or 5, and there's another one on the drawing board as well that we're working with.
All right. Well, councillors, a good rollout and the opportunity of certainly our staff being able to access those properties that they've had certainly an association with. Any questions? Sorry, Councillor Moriarty.
Sorry, just get myself sorted. Just a comment, really. It's great to see that with the selling of the assets, in a way, it's gone around that we're able to keep a staff member and someone in Doringa. As the community have said there, the number of staff houses that council had in the community, they could see while they were vacant, how that, I suppose, undermined the vitality of the community and the opportunity to become more vibrant. So from my perspective, it's great to know that a staff member is actually staying in Doringa, and that's a great thing. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, councillors. Well, the recommendation there, and I mean, I know it's quite a lengthy one, but obviously when there is a ministerial exception, then they have to be worded in a way that correctly reflects that decision and that process. And certainly we acknowledge Adam for I guess, the success of actually being a successful applicant for that, or a successful transaction of this property. So the first part there deals with the ministerial exemption. The valuation is in the second part, and then obviously the community benefit is outlined in the third part of that recommendation. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Rolfe, seconded Councillor Curtis. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle. Well done, Adam. Councillors, the next one is 12.4, which comes under our Acting General Manager, Infrastructure and Utilities, Jason Houlihan, in relation to fees and charges for water pricing. I'll hand over to Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report we have today seeks to request an amendment to the Register of Commercial and Cost Recovery Fees for the 21-22 financial year. This request is for the Sapphire standpipe, the new Sapphire standpipe, and it is aiming to correct some anomalies with the pricing between the two standpipes in the Gemfields area. I'll hand over now to Marvin Pacheco, the Acting Manager of Water Utilities, to run through the report.
And before you start, Marvin, welcome to the boardroom as well. I think this may be your first meeting, so welcome today. Yeah.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors and ELT members. What you have in front of you is a report requesting a change to our fees and charges for standpipes. What we have in at the moment is a situation where we have two standpipes at close proximity to each other. Each one of those standpipes for commercial purposes is a different rate. So the current policy is for standpipes to be charged at $6.90 per kilolitre. The existing Sapphire standpipe, the charge for that is at $5.70 per kilolitre. What we're seeking is to equalise those two, given that the community's expectation is that they get charged $5.70. What we're looking for is for the new standpipe to be charged at $5.70, with a view that over time they will be equalised across the whole Shire. The aim of this exercise is to gauge the community uptake on the new standpipe. The old standpipe, the infrastructure is quite old and it's becoming quite difficult to maintain. We also have some safety concerns about how slippery it gets around the standpipe itself because of the leaks. So what we want to do is encourage the community to use the new standpipe. So on those basis, we're looking for your consideration and acceptance of that change to the rates.
Right, councillors, questions? I think this is a matter that's been discussed a number of times. Yeah, go, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, I probably haven't been part of that, but I just wanted to get clear. Sorry, Marvin. So the standpipe currently charging the $6.90?
Yeah, so there's two standpipes. So
yes.
Both of them are operational. The old one is $5.70. Yeah. And the new is $6.90.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I was trying to get my head around it a little bit. Sorry.
Yes, okay.
So you want to have both of them at $5.70? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I just noted that following community consultation. So that's great if council's listening to the community as well, because it's not just the impacts for the communities; it's all the visitors to the region as well. And you were saying the view going forward is that other standpipes in the region would go back to $5.70?
No.
Or in the future, the standpipe will go up?
That standpipe will go up, that's correct, to $6.90. But we would do it on a step changed basis, yeah.
Yeah.
So what we, obviously the intent was to provide a new bit of infrastructure for the community.
Yes.
Unfortunately, what's happened is that because of the differential pricing, it's actually created some confusion. And what we have is, some of the communities using the cheaper standpipe. And because whilst that happens, we are not able to basically get rid of that standpipe. So until that, we're able to, assist the community in using the new infrastructure, we have to maintain the old infrastructure. And like I said, it's becoming quite difficult to do because of the age of it.
Yeah, okie dokie. Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to support that. And yeah, it's great that the community's been listened to as well. Thank you.
And I guess as a direction from council, it's good that we listen to community, but we also got to look at cost recovery in our water. Our costs at standpipe are substantively discounted and are being in fact subsidised by community more broadly. So I guess in terms of making sure there's an acceptable and appropriate level of cost there, we've got to also bear in mind the fact that this is being subsidised across the broader water supply scheme. So there's a bit of a balancing act there. So I guess at the end of the day, when we start talking about $9 and $12 million of infrastructure capital that's got to be spent on water, we've got to look like we can afford to do that. So we'll try and keep that balance right, Marvin. So, all right, councillors, the recommendation there is it's columnised. And as Councillor Moriarty's just fleshed out the validation to that change in cost, is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Brimley-Combe, seconded by Councillor Burns. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you, Marvin.
Thank you.
Councillors, Building Our Regions Fund comes under Jason's hand again as Acting Manager General of Infrastructure and Utilities. This is in relation to, obviously, state government funding, which this year is about water. This particular version, round 6, is about water. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As mentioned by the Mayor, this round 6 of the Building Our Regions Fund has been advertised and will provide $70 million over 3 years to councils to improve their water supply and sewage systems, jointly funded by the Department of Regional Development, Manufacturing and Water. Expressions of interest for round 6 of this fund, November. The minimum grant contribution from the fund is $100,000 and the maximum grant is $2 million. And that is up to a maximum of 50%. Council has, through our SPGG, our Strategic Program Governance Group, has selected 3 projects for recommendation to apply for funding for this project. And I apologise, councillors, in table 1 there's an error. The last column of the last line says 200,000, it should be $2 million. The total of eligible projects is correct in being 3.9, but of the $4 million for the TRE pipeline, the application will be $2 million. So the 3 projects we're recommending for application are the Dingo Water Treatment Plant Filter Upgrade Project, the Opal Street Water Treatment Plant Filters Upgrade, and the TRE Capella Pipeline, some repairs on that pipeline, about 6 kilometres of repairs. Funding, as mentioned, closes in November, and we're expecting to be advised of successful applications around June of 2022. Currently there's no implications on this year's budget with these projects, and there won't be, given the allocation of timing around the notification. However, all these projects are allocated for future year funding, so it would just be matching or contributing with the State Department off our existing funding that Council would be required to fund. So the budget impacts for this financial year are negligible. On that basis, Council, the recommendation is that we apply for those 3 projects and submit applications. The Central Highlands Regional Council endorsed the following projects for submission under the Building Our Regions Round 6, being Dingo, the Water Treatment Plant Filter Upgrade, and Opal Street Water Treatment Plant Filter Upgrade, and the TRE Pipeline for those values as mentioned in the recommendation.
Thanks, Jason. Councillor, just to add to that, I did promise that I would follow up with the acting CEO the federal government funding through the National Water Grid Connections Fund, and I've sought some clarification, I guess, on whether local government qualifies to the criteria mentioned in there. To that extent, I spoke to Ken O'Dowd's office, and this will come under Minister Keith Pitt's portfolio. But I guess in terms of, whilst we are dealing with very much the emergent situation that's in the Capella area, I mean, over the last 20 years, that water supply has been augmented via a pipeline from TRE that obviously, in a substantive, I suppose, approach to just risk more broadly with our water supply grids, that we do consolidate that, and clearly with certainly the intentions of companies like Glencore in the region and some potential expansion, that we look at perhaps the opportunities there with co-funding as well. So I guess in the process of I guess you'd say partnerships that generally follow sometimes these Building Our Regions funding, it's not inappropriate that we can source funding from a number of sources to augment perhaps the success or otherwise of this particular application to help offset some more costs there and probably improve certainly that supply from TRE. But it's currently in this Building Our Regions application fund at this quantum, but we'll certainly make sure we follow through with these other investigations as well to hopefully maybe get some other partners on board. Councillor's question, Councillor Rolt. Yeah.
Mayor, yes, I should have just clicked the off button because you've just answered my query about applying for further funding for the same things as in the pipeline as we discussed yesterday in our strategy briefing. So very good, thank you.
If I could be encouraged, certainly by putting out the document around the water grid, it is in fact the very pipeline type construction that we're looking for. So I guess if they really wanted the opportunity of duplicating that somewhere, we can certainly fit them out by getting that done. All right, councillors, the recommendation is there, and with that endorsement and just that clarification that Jason's made on the left, the right-hand column of the table 1 that's on page 15 of the agenda, which is just the fact that column application should say $2 million. and obviously that's referred to in the project application amount in the recommendation. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Moriarty, seconded by Councillor Burns. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Right, all things water. The Yamala Enterprise Area Water Infrastructure Business Case comes under Jason's hand again. If you'll lead us off again, please.
Thank you again, Mr Mayor. As mentioned, this report is around the Yamala Enterprise Area Water Infrastructure Business Case. This business case has recently been completed by Council and was jointly funded by Council Funding and Building Our Regions Round 5. The draft business case was completed and presented to Council at a strategy and briefing forum on the 5th of October of this year. The business case identified 7 possible options, considering of options from pipelines from Emerald itself and others from the Nagoa River closer to Yamala. The report recommended an option which came from Selma Weir, provided a pipeline to Yamala Enterprise Area and provided for 23 litres per second of raw water under Stage 1. Stage 1's cost was $22.6 million, with a further stage of Stage 2 being $12.5 million to take the water ultimately up to 81 litres per second provided to the area, to the Yamala Enterprise Area. The business case, as mentioned, has been approved, signed by council officers, and is presented today for councils to receive the business case. The next stages will obviously be, if received by council and endorsed, the due diligence will continue on with the project in regards to traditional owner and land acquisitions or agreements within the road reserve. Some further community consultation around the preferred alignment and some confirmation of the demand that is expected in the Yamala Enterprise Area, and further modelling around that demand. Funding has not been allocated in this year's budget or any future year's budget of Council's adopted budget or long-term financial plan at this stage based on this project. In saying that, Council, the recommendation for the Yamala Enterprise for today is the Council receive the Yamala Enterprise Area Water Infrastructure Business Case, Revision 2, which was presented to Council previously, and continue to advocate for external funding to progress the preferred option as recommended in the business case, which is option 4A, connection to Emerald from Selma Weir with a raw water supply. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Jason. Questions, councillors? Councillor Rolfe? Oh, sorry, Councillor Moriarty.
Yeah.
Bingo. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, General Manager Wilhelm. So option 4, then, it's the one that had, these 2 stages are part of option 4?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So all options had staging approach.
Okay.
Option 4 specifically is the pipeline that connects the Selma Weir to the Yamala Enterprise with a raw water pipeline. So other options were staged. They might have been treated water, or they might have been from other intake points along the Nagoa River. But all options were staged. The option presented in front of you today, option 4A, has 2 stages, one being stage 1, which is 22.6 million, and stage 2 being 12.5 million.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I understand, obviously, these are long-term investments and do take time to progress. So this is the second investigation that's been done, feasibility into the water access to Yamala Enterprise Area. Is that what this is the second?
Councillor, this is the business case. The revision 2 just refers to the actual, in any business case, it becomes a draft, and then there's some revisions as you go along and you learn more about the project. The business case was completed to a draft format. It then was revised, given some more additional information that we became aware of, and that became revision 2. So revision 2, while it says revision 2 in the recommendation, this is the first completed business case on this project.
Thank you very much. It's great that council are actually doing like the business case to actually support any future development. I noted that continue to advocate for external funding, and you're thinking that funding would be through government and private enterprise or anything, or?
Thank you, councillor. Yes, there's many options, similar to the Building Our Regions funding. Unfortunately, the quantum of this dollar figure wouldn't qualify for Building Our Regions, being only a $70 million fund with a maximum of $2 million contribution by the state. But there are other options and other funding opportunities which we'll seek, and they may be a combination of both private and state or federal funding, or one or the other. So there's many options which we can continue to progress.
And my only other question is, if you commit to like stage 1, then you have to go through to stage 2, given that the whole project's, around that, around that $35 million. It's a lot of funding to source to progress.
Yeah, councillor. So the concept of the staging approach is to minimise that upfront funds required. The stage 2, while indicated in the report, estimated around 2027, is based on demand. So if the Yamal Enterprise area the demand for water was brought forward, stage 2 could be brought forward, or if there's delays in the water demand from the Yamal Enterprise area, stage 2 might not be needed until that demand is reached of that 23 litres per second.
Good. So it'd probably be the $22.6 million that you'd be looking for funding for first, then the next.
Councillor, I think we would leave our options open if there was an opportunity to provide to fund the whole project up front. That may be what council considers appropriate. However, if there are options to do staged or a combined approach in one project.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I possibly should have added, obviously the staging certainly of the option that's being, I suppose, considered in the recommendation today is about the demand, and whilst the business case looks at potential demand of potential, and I'm using the words deliberately here, potential tenants, there's no guarantee that in terms of the types of business, whether it's a value-adding proposition, high water usage, low water usage, that it's impossible to predicate what that might be. That certainly the staging process there allows us for the growth of the potentiality to duplicate that transfer main. Important thing to remember here is that this is not it doesn't become the property of the Central Queensland Inland Port. This is a council utility. So in fact, whilst we're talking about the connection to the Central Queensland Inland Port, any opportunity, I guess, between obviously the offtake and certainly Yamal as the delivery point is potentially considered a beneficiary of that pipeline, which could influence even the need for an upgrade. So you can imagine it goes right past the agricultural college that has been discussed about potential water usage there. Those sorts of things would benefit from this. It's really important to point out that the business case actually comes up at over 1, which quite frankly is quite a substantive rate, in terms of the I suppose you'd consider the return on investment or value proposition is extremely high, and extremely high in regional Queensland. and we've taken the opportunity prior to even today, with council considering this, that certainly in terms of the federal election, there's very much a very strong interest by candidates and those parties to understand that this is a significant regional and broader region piece of infrastructure. And we agree with that, but I guess at the end of the day, the practicalities and the operation that Jason oversees, we just need to understand that we are going to take over a significant piece of water utility infrastructure, and we need to make sure that it's appropriate and obviously within our, I suppose, whole of life cost, and that business case was very, very pleasing. So I guess in that respect, it doesn't give us a tick for anything other than it's a good business case. And if we adopt that today, councillors, we will be in a strong position to, I guess, as advocates, to go to whether it's federal funding or state funding. It will certainly be very much based on some very, very strong data and I guess evidentiary by just driving there and looking and seeing quite an odd sight of large mounds of grain at this particular juncture covered with tarpaulins, which is proof of life, I guess you'd say. And the reality is that you know, by Christmas, certainly logistics company is hoping to be in there. You may have seen this week even the pouring of some of the infrastructure for that logistics operator at the port site. So you know, the business case around just the port is really, really strong, and I guess the opportunity for that piece of infrastructure heading east from Emerald opens up a whole new corridor of opportunity out there as well. So I would strongly recommend this to you. So, councillors, that recommendation is there is to receive the report, obviously that Jason has shared with us in that revision 2 form, and then obviously our responsibility then to continue to advocate for that external funding, and as Councillor Moriarty said, whether that's with public sector, private sector, and anyone else that wants to invest there, we're certainly encouraging them. So, happy to move that, Councillor. Moved by Councillor Roll, seconded Councillor Moriarty. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Thank you, Jason. It's nice to get a business case with a 1 in front of it, I can tell you. Although it isn't the sole determinant of how things work, because I think we had a discussion about the Rockhampton Ring Road recently, and it quite didn't get up to 1. It might have been a 0.4 or 0.5, but there's $800 million went down there, so we're looking for the similar recognition, I guess, at some point. Which is a good segue into our next agenda item, 12.4.4, which is our Capricorn Highway, Code Noir Road to Opal Street, which is Code 4, and I've said this before, the upgrade of the Vince Lester Bridge, and this is another important milestone, and certainly comes under Jason's hand again, so if you could lead us off.
Thank you again, Mr Mayor. This next report with regard to the Capricorn Highway, Code Noir Road to Opal Street upgrade project business case, and as the Mayor mentioned, it's specifically around the raising of the Vince Lester Bridge. The project was initiated by Council as a part of our ongoing commitment to flood mitigation. It was an objective of a previous Council resolution. Council contributed $750,000 to this business case, which was matched by Transport and Main Roads for Council to undertake the business case on their behalf. The project initially went through a preliminary evaluation phase with Transport and Main Roads, which included components of replacement of the Vince Lester Bridge, upgrades of the intersections of the highways and approaches to the bridge from Code Noir Road right through to Opal Street, and provision of pedestrian cyclists, provision for pedestrians and cyclists. The preliminary evaluation was completed in November 8, 2018, and since then Council's been working on the business case as mentioned. The business case was completed in June 2021 and determined that the cost-benefit analysis returned of a value of 0.17, and as mentioned by the Mayor, this isn't always the sole determination of whether the project is should be considered to be moved forward. The recommendation of the business case is that the Capricorn Highway, Code Noir Road to Opal Street flood immunity, traffic capacity and safety upgrade project progress to detailed design phase, that the preferred option is the construction of a 295-metre long bridge, including pedestrian and cyclist facilities over the Nagoa River at a higher level to improve flood immunity and flood evacuation. The associated ancillary works around approaches and intersections, the removal of the existing Vince Lester Bridge, the removal of the existing timber pedestrian bridge, and the reinstatement of the rail crossing at Opal Street with the associated intersection upgrades. Delivery of the project is to advance under a traditional delivery model, which is TMR's standard approach. A copy of the business case has been provided to Transport and Main Roads to support further consideration of planning projects in their life cycle. So based on that, councillors, the recommendation is that council receives the business case as mentioned in the recommendation, and council continue to advocate for external funding for the project.
Thank you, Jason. And it doesn't seem a very long report for a significant amount of work and time and effort that's been put into this by certainly council staff and certainly regional DTMR staff. We did coincidentally have the opportunity this week of meeting with our regional, I think managers, is it the correct term? Director? Regional Director David Gross. I just want to acknowledge him appropriately in I suppose this joint steering committee that we've had now for I think nearly 3 years has been a joint effort between certainly a state department and council, which is quite unique. Accepted their responsibilities, shared a lot of good information and data, and in respect of, I suppose, observing a process where we need to, fundamentally outline that we were driven certainly by mitigation for our community. There is clear evidence and agreed evidence that certainly the current structure contributes to afflux upstream, and obviously the need, I guess, on a number of bases, and that's included in the report, that obviously needs to be considered. So it's been through an IIC process with DTMR, at the risk of using acronyms too much. That is a, what is it, Jason, an it's an infrastructure
investment committee.
Investment committee. So it's actually recognised in a DTMR sense as as a recognised piece of infrastructure that needs to be constructed. It doesn't tell you when. It just makes sure that it's actually qualified. We've actually very much appreciated the contribution to our part of our I suppose, responsibility in the joint venture in terms of delivering this business case. However, at the end of this process, we still have to advocate for that funding. I believe that at some point, certainly from a state perspective, there will be some deliberation and consideration ongoing about where this is prioritised for them. In the meanwhile, I guess it's up to us to make sure that, I guess, the impact and certainly in terms of mitigation, in terms of resilience, and certainly in terms of evacuation under the current plan that we have, obviously the community that sits on this side of the river and communities that extend from the road networks on west and north are impacted by the inability to cross this at different times. So whilst the business case can certainly make an assessment more broadly, I think there is always a great danger of that full impact not being done. I believe that these are the sorts of things that will add to the business case ratio that we need to influence people to actually bring this forward. So we have always strongly stated in our mitigation communication with our community that we, in doing flood studies and flood reporting, that all mitigation options are covered. This is certainly a major part of that, and it was a major consideration in our consideration around the decision not to proceed with significant levy banks. This becomes more important to us to make sure that this is done, and obviously the process that we've just been through very diligently puts us in a position now to I guess have a very solid base to step off. Bad pun not intended. And the reality is that it will be our responsibility, and you can see these are starting to accumulate, that there are major pieces of infrastructure that do warrant investment, and we need to make those cases for those. So I did say to the regional director that I guess in some way, shape or form, the formal end of that arrangement would probably happen soon. He suggested that a summary page will be created and we'll be able to I'll go back to our communities and into his department to say the outcome of this process is exactly what it is, and that will be a good document to be sharing, and then obviously we can make the acknowledgements certainly of that process. A point he did raise was clearly if you've read the business case soundly, at some point if we were to be successful, it comes to Opal Street, there will be some impacts on the, I guess you'd say, the thoroughfare there now, and those are matters and certainly some changes to some other traffic around the approaches. Those will be things we will have to deal with, but I guess at the end of the day, if we're successful, I'm sure as a community that we can work our way into making sure that the opportunity is the best chance we'll get. Given the timing of when the last bridge was constructed, and if you took the interval between old bridge to newer bridge to the newest bridge, we won't get a new one again, I think, for another 40 or 50 years, and I'd hope we wouldn't need to have one. But the reality is we need to make sure that we make this opportunity the best one we can possibly make it for obviously people travelling through, but people travelling across and around certainly that piece of infrastructure. So we will get to that point where hopefully we can announce some good funding for this in the future. Questions, Councillor? Councillor Moriarty.
Just comments really, Mr Mayor. Thank you very, very much for that great explanation. And I totally agree. And these are the sort of things that, you know, councils have to be doing to be planning for the future. You know, this may not be realised for, you know, could be 10 years or so, but if councils aren't stepping forward and advocating for their communities, especially on very, you know, critical topics or factors like improving flood immunity. I think that our council is doing everything they can there to demonstrate their due diligence and due care, really, with addressing flood risk mitigation. So, yeah, I just couldn't help but I think I might have actually mentioned this when we were having our strategy session and information to go through the business case. I was wondering if by the time this bridge is built, whether we'd be actually looking for those double lanes, but double lane highways and bridges, but yeah, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to confirm that I agree with everything that you were saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moriarty. All right, councillors, I guess I hope it's not 10 years, and I know you've been quite pragmatic, Councillor Moriarty, but I'd like to think that certainly the value that we can add to that business case story, and it will be our responsibility, that we can keep adding to that, and our intention is to do that. I think our community's made it quite clear that you know, they are watching how our council is progressing with mitigation works, and we've said this is a major one, but you know, things like the work Jason's doing on LN1 and other things, we are continuously, perpetually, the work that Bill Wilkinson's doing in Bluff and the gem fields, that will keep going, and obviously we'll keep seeking the funding that makes us a little more resilient. So we've got no other option, councillors. All right, the recommendation is there that we receive that business case and we continue to advocate for external funding, so that keeps us responsible. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Moriarty, second Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. I think we're only up to about a couple of $100 million so far today, Jason, so we're going pretty well. Councillors, we're moving to 12.5, and this now moves to our acting CEO, Michael, just in relation to some a request for support for the Lake Maribyrnong Holiday Village Big Red Claw. So over to you, acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the receipt of a letter from the Lake Maribyrnong Holiday Village requesting some financial assistance or consideration by council to assist in, and they're looking for local business input and other government agencies too, the construction of the Big Red Claw as a tourist attraction on land at Lake Maribyrn. The land is owned by the Holiday Village, and they believe that the attraction will impact positively on the local community and contribute to the brand story and increasing community pride within the region, which will increase visitation and education tourism by adding to the Fairburn Dam story and say an industry-led approach to developing visitor attractors. So they're seeking collaboration with council on that. We have been in touch with the Holiday Village regarding the building code requirements and any planning requirements, and they're aware of their situation as regards to complying with the building code and planning scheme. That the report asked to council consider any monetary value, if any, for this request to provide the funding towards the tourist attraction. And they see it as a tourist attraction, not personal signage, but something that will, increase tourism to the Lake Maribyrn in particular, but to the Central Highlands area. They're following on from the big pineapple and the big orange, and
Lots of big things. All right, councillors, can I just add a couple of things to this as well? I have a message. I have to return a call to John Walsh at Fairburn Dam. I haven't done that yet deliberately because I wanted to make sure we had this conversation first. The message he left with me, and I haven't qualified this yet, was that he obviously had spoken with the relevant tourism minister in Queensland, which is Sterling Hinchliffe at the moment, and that short message basically indicated that, and I need to qualify this, that perhaps he wasn't getting the support that he probably requested, certainly directly with the minister. So at the risk of reading something into something that hasn't happened or didn't happen, I think there's, my response to this would be, and the reason Michael brought this to the agenda is to have council consider this. I mean, we are in a position where we are considering and clearly waiting for confirmation, certainly of perhaps an opportunity with the recreation area for council, and the fact that the Lake Maribyrn Holiday Village is the preeminent, obviously, activity that happens at the dam, other than obviously for recreation in the other parts. A piece of infrastructure like this, clearly has always been almost inherently a part of Australian, the persona of us all, that any time that there's something that's fairly considerably sort of an attraction, we make something big around it. But I guess this would be a bit of a precedent in terms of, I guess you'd say, the monetary support of something like this that would arguably be built potentially on the Lake Maribyrn or the Holiday Village site. And I think it would be probably appropriate that we look at, perhaps furthering the investigation into what the proposal looks like on the ground. I think we don't need to necessarily indicate a monetary value until we assess that. And I guess in that respect, I'm seeking councillors' views on perhaps the opportunity of maybe at this stage declining to offer a monetary value, but instead offer our certainly support in terms of maybe looking at what the proposal looks like, and then probably where it could be located, because I think in that conversation we might be in a position to have a discussion that might suit everyone, and maybe avail the opportunity of funding in different ways rather than an individual. So I guess I just wanted to bring you up to date on where I was with certainly a conversation with John, and our conversation today might direct how I respond to him. So, Councillor Rolfe.
Yeah, so Mayor, my question actually was about the actual construction of although it would clearly be a development application for construction of something on private land, but also to comment that I didn't really think that council should, in my mind, should be investing funds in something that we don't even have a plan for yet, you know, on private land. So good on them for wanting to increase tourism. You can't stop that, and that's great. But I think it just puts pressure on council that we don't need at this stage. And we do have, as you rightly say, we've got an area of the dam that will be developed. Yeah, and that's for everybody as well. So I'd prefer to see the funds go to, if it was funding, the funds go to a council facility. Thanks.
Well, and I think that's, to be quite frank with you, and I think it is an important point. Michael brought it to the agenda to make sure that we're aware of this opportunity, and I think really it's just a case of, I think there is a good opportunity for us to have a bit more discussion about, you know, the best location for it. Does it fit in with, you know, that broader interests out there? And it might be that we can achieve you know, the idea that John's got, and it might be in a way that will benefit us all. So I guess if we can have that conversation, I think that'll be great. Councillor Moriarty.
Yeah, totally agree, Mr Mayor, and agree with Councillor Rolfe. It would be interesting to have a bit more of a further conversation around, you know, what other funding is out there and if that's been looked at, because that's usually a criteria for council getting involved in any, going down that path of any sort of support. But also, we're still awaiting our tourism and camping strategy that's being done by CHRC. And as you quite rightly say, you know, we need to be looking at, I think, the whole region and the bigger picture on what's happening in each of the communities. And I think that if we're going to be looking at iconic kind of structures, it took a long time for the Gemfields structure to be built at the crossroads there, which has been something that took a long time for everyone to come together to get that structure done. And I think, from my perspective, it would be good to have a conversation and learn more with John, is it?
Yeah, John.
With John,
Thanks,
going forward.
Yep. Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Rolfe. I think it's been on private property and not, and I think we're going to be investing heavily in the immediate area anyway. So
yep.
That's what it looks like anyway. So we'll see what happens. But no.
Well, council is then happy to, and I respectfully want to respond to John's. You know, he's keen and wants to see something happen, but that we do have a recommendation that we consider further discussions with the Lake Maribyrn Holiday Village around the proposal, and bring a report back later to council, Michael. Yeah. And that can allow us to consider, and that can be with Central Highlands Development Corporation representatives as well, although we can't speak for them, but we can certainly talk about, obviously, the opportunities there. And I suppose it would be on the basis of, in terms of timeliness, you know, sharing with the Maribyrn Holiday Village, you know, the potentiality of the land area, the recreation area that we can discuss with them, and that might come up with a bit more fruitful discussion. So.
Mayor, we don't want to be seen to be just making this prolonging
Perpetuating this agenda item? No.
Yep. So, but then yeah.
Well, you can take out the last part of that and just say further discussion of the Lake Holiday Village about the construction of the big red claw, and leave it at that, and that allows the time to not necessarily agendarise it before we've had that discussion with him, And then if we needed to bring it back here, fine. If we don't, well, we don't. So just take out that the last part of that money can come out. All right. Happy to move that, Councillor Rolfe. It's been moved. Seconded, Councillor Moriarty. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillors, 14.2 is the quarterly People and Culture Report. Comes under General Manager Margaret Gatt from Corporate Services. And I know, I see Tanya Lowe's in the room, and I'll leave it to Margaret to make the introduction and lead us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. As the Mayor has indicated, this is our quarterly People and Culture Report, where we provide you an update on key initiatives, which is detailed in our current operational plan, our people strategy and its associated action plans, compliance with legislative requirements and directives, any identified risks and associated treatment plans, audit findings and recommendations, and any changes to Council's organisation, community, industry and other stakeholder requirements, and also ongoing environmental impacts or factors such as COVID. And I'll hand over to Tanya Lowe, our Acting Manager, People and Culture, to speak to the detail of the report. Thanks, Tanya.
Through the Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors, members of the LT and Marnie. Apologies again for not being able to be with you last month when you were at Springshaw. I was very much looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I wasn't well. And I'll apologise in advance if I start coughing. When I talk a little bit too much, I cough, but I'm perfectly okay, I promise. So what I'd like to do is start going through this report is to give you a bit of a snapshot of our workforce and how that's represented as of the 30th of September. You can see with that snapshot, we've had a slight decline in numbers from the previous quarter. So the makeup, and what I've included in this for you, when you're looking at a proper workforce, we need to include everyone who's contributing. And so that does include labour hire component, which I don't think has been reported on previously. And so at the moment, or for that quarter, we had 15. And they're for various numbers of reasons. It could be from backfilling positions if we're unable to recruit that position, projects, those types of things. So I wanted to make sure we included that so you had a proper representation of the workforce as it actually stood. And then if we have a look at the makeup of the workforce, and I always like to look at comparisons between the other councils that we're representative. So we've got a group of resource councils that we compare our data with. So if we have a look at that from a makeup perspective, most of our employees are full-time staff, and that's pretty much standard with most of our other comparative councils as well. Same with our part-time sitting at 8%. The area that I wanted to highlight is we've got our casual employment at 2%. Most of the other councils we're comparing data with is around 9%. And so that gives us an opportunity when we're doing some workforce planning to have a look at when we're recruiting a position or when a position comes available, how, do we automatically go for a full-time role, or do we look at how we could best position that as we're looking at the changing landscape of what is the war for talent at the moment that we're currently appealing with. So that gives us an opportunities to have a look at those types of things. We are fairly standard with our male-female gender ratio, and 2% for our Indigenous employees, and that's representative of our communities around that 3% mark there at the moment. Then if we have a look at our locations, I really like to see how everyone is spread out, and I was actually a bit surprised to see Springshaw and Blackwater sort of at equal footing in terms of staffing looking out there. And then from our indoor and outdoor staff, so indoor staff, out of those 452, there's 255. So that includes anyone who's on an employee contract, so that could be a manager or a specialist service or a specialist technical engineer, for example, or anyone who's on stream A. So historically they're known as indoor workers or supervisors who've gone, coordinators who are at that level, and our outdoor staff at 197. And so that includes anyone who's under an award stream B or C. So that's our outdoor workers, but also our workshops, just to give you a bit of an idea of those numbers sitting there. And then for me, turnover is something I always like to look at. It's something that we use as a bit of a lever in terms of how we look at the changes or the strategies that we like to implement, because retention is a huge thing for any organisation. Last year, our annual turnover was 18%, the comparative data with those other councils was just sort of between 16 and around 16%, I think it was, just under. And so for the last quarter, we had 28 people leave the organisation. So that's a 6%, but if you annualise that, that's at 24%. So that's a number I want to keep an eye on and understand why we're having turnover. Some turnover, as we discussed in my last report, is good, but the rate of turnover that we're having now, that's too high. And so I like to have a look at, well, where is that turnover happening? And so the biggest from a 10-year point of view, and when you have a look at people going through their life cycles, you may remember that the last time I reported 30% of our 12-month or under employees, that was a turnover figure that was way too high. For that last quarter, that was down to 14%, so we're seeing some improvements there. But the biggest part is that 1 to 5 year mark. Typically in any organisation, that is the largest turnover point because they've come in, they've sort of gone through the probation period. Do they like that? But then they're also not locked into long service leave after that. So you typically see that's the biggest turnover. Within the organisation, that represents 42% of our workforce if we're looking at that as a bigger picture perspective. And then also at age, so 36% of those people who are leaving us are between that 21 to 30 year age bracket. That, from a workforce across the 452 people, that only represents 15% of our workforce. We do have an ageing workforce. I think it's 39% are 50 and over. So we do really need to have a focus on getting not just all ages in, but we do need to have a look at those age groups coming in, because if we're looking at long workforce planning strategies, that's an area we need to focus on. So when we're looking at employer branding strategies or what we can do to support, there's more work we need to uncover that, but first we need to understand the why. Which does bring me through to the next page. So looking at our workforce relations, and this is mainly looked after by our people and performance team. So if I have a look at the exit reasons, at the moment this data is still, it's fairly basic, and I'd like a little bit more rigour around this. So we have a variance of reasons there. You'll see some of the resignations. I think there's 4 people in there that were actually on performance management, but I would like to dig down into those a bit easier. I have a workshop with the ELT next month to look at exit surveys, questions and those sorts of things, so that I can understand those reasons a bit better, and so that we can put some better strategies in place rather than not understanding. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is our business support approach, and part of our business partnering model is to go out there into the organisation. So we've certainly seen an increase of the work that person or that team is actually doing, but we actually expected that, because if they're looking at going out and helping the organisation, the whole purpose is to have that impact and help support those operational leaders to be able to do those roles with not just softer skills, but with some technical advice, get in there early before major issues become larger issues. We're sort of expecting these numbers to come up because we're supporting. So even though there's investigations in there, they don't have to be, going to the CCC type investigations. Those, for example, could be anything from a grievance on how a behaviour of someone else that we just need to do some coaching around or some support. So there's a lot of work going behind the scenes, and hopefully some of the ELT members will be able to talk about their positive experience in having those people within their departments. And the other thing I want to recognise is, even though there's performance management, to me is not a dirty word, that's an opportunity to improve. And we do see people that we put on performance improvement plans actually improve and meet the expectations that's expected of them. I also like to use performance improvement plans when we're looking at promotion opportunities, or looking at someone going on to another senior role, so they can understand what their expectations are. So we have a bit of a challenge, but we're on that task to change the way people look at performance management and how we can support people to improve those their outcomes. If we have a look though at some positives, we had some great wins that this team was certainly involved in. The certified agreement, great result to have a 94% vote. I think we had just over 62% of the employee population vote on that, and so that was an outstanding result from that. Some of the positives that came out of that is that the pay increase, the payroll team worked very hard to actually manually go back and do all those pay increases from the 1st of July, so that's actually now happened. One of the other things that's also happened with that team is the performance check-ins that we've had to, from an annual point of view, have some rigour around that, and that's been systemised. So for the internal workers, that's all online, and for the outdoor workers, that's usually a paper-based form, but the real benefit is the conversation, is that having those conversations to be able to give people an opportunity to talk through their experience over the last year, what they'd like to develop in, and from that we develop individual development plans that go into the training team. And then we had quite a busy quarter for union consultation, so over 17 matters. That could be for, again, a range of reasons, everything from any changes within the organisation to if we do need to get a temporary worker in, we need to talk to them about that, as well as having our quarterly reviews. The benefit of having those union consultations is that we'd like to try and have a collaborative approach with them, because obviously they're the voice of our employees, so we need to be able to listen to that with and have some collegiance there as well. Looking at recruitment, I guess I wanted to highlight here, we have new starters, and roughly we're around 30 to 35 new starters each quarter, but I also wanted to highlight the new starters who are new to the organisation, as well as the people who are developing, because that's just as important to see how we are growing our own and how we are developing our own. I expect that number to even increase more. A part of the certified agreement was that internal workers do get an extra merit point attributed to their application, so we expect to see them increase their applications and get through that interview process as well.
Tanya, can I just, sorry to interrupt you, and I'll give you a chance to have a drink of water as well. Is in this graphic, is this probably in terms of a comparative, in terms of like vacancies advertised, applications received, vacancies filled? Is that still the same, conversion rate that we generally get? Is that, or, is that just a couple of comments on the numbers of those? And you probably may have been, were going to, but and I wasn't trying to give you a water break, but that was the one that sort of, I guess, in terms of, just a comparative to know, usually people say, there are, having read the previous slide and looking at the reasons why people move, then is the numbers that, are filled into each of these parts of this graphic indicative of generally the same sort of activity and success rate, I guess, if that's what it is, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. Through the chair, thank you for that question, and yes, I'll give you some information about that right now. So comparing that to last quarter, and typically we've actually come slightly down, but those numbers going through are fairly typical for what we've seen over the last 12 months. The most important stat for me, though, is the applications in, because that's what we want to be able to see. How is our employer branding helping us? We were at 307 applications. That's roughly about 6.4. Sorry, I'm talking about last quarter. Last quarter we had 4.4 per role. This quarter we've had 6.41 per role. And so we've had a bit of a focus around our employer branding strategies, more Facebook exposure, different areas we can actually try and get to the people we need to be speaking to, and that's seen an increase there. So that to me is the important one, as well as that conversion rate at the end. The other rate that's important is to have a look at this and go, well, how many roles haven't we filled? And that's where I wanted to highlight that number of 21 roles that we're struggling to fill, and what are we going to do about that? And so we've had some workforce planning meetings, so Parks and Gardens being one of those. So one of the typical roles that we've struggled to fill have been some technical roles within our finance, corporate services team, and rates roles. They're really specialist positions, which are, if you can find them, that's the first point, and then getting them here's the second issue. And then we have the entry-level roles, which are those labour-intensive roles where the market is just so competitive at the moment. So we did a session with Elisa's team to look at their workforce, how the composition of the workforce was looking, and what could we do differently. I think it was, it was Councillor Daniels last time was talking about the barriers of entry in terms of we might have tickets or mandates if people aren't applying because of those. Well, we've been working very hard to be talking to people that it's okay if you don't have a construction ticket. Are you willing to get that? We will help you get those tickets, so that we're having conversations with every single person who applies for a role. And then on the back of that, we started some community consultations. So we're calling them career information sessions, and we've been out to 5 locations, so Blackwater, Doringa, Capella, Emerald, Springshaw, and actually gone out with Parks and Gardens staff as well as the infrastructure staff and the recruitment team to talk to members of the public about what it's like to work for council, what would you like to know, and then we could also hear from them into what their barriers of entry are. If they want to work for us, is that as a casual? Is it part-time? Are the hours a benefit? I will have to report the numbers were fairly low on those attendees, but it's just a start, and we intend to do that on a quarterly basis just to get out there to have those conversations to find out. We've got another session with Nagoa, apologies if I'm saying that incorrectly, where we'll have the recruitment team and the P&C team there to talk to members of the public about working at council and what that looks like, because we need to try something different to get that through.
Thanks, Tony.
Sorry, does that help answer?
Yep.
Okay. And so I know for myself, if I'm looking at jobs on Facebook as a parameter, the amount of jobs that are available in the Central Highlands region at the moment, it's incredible. I looked even last night, there was somebody who is looking for a traineeship. I must admit they didn't apply for our traineeship, which I was a little bit annoyed about, but there was probably 6 or 7 different businesses who had posted send me your resume, so they're what we're competing with. So as a strategy, we're working with the people PR team. I was going to say marketing comms, but they've just changed their name. In terms of our employer branding. So for those people in those roles, so whether they're infrastructure or parks and gardens, we've highlighted 3 or 4 people that we want to do a day in the life of. We'll do some video grabs of that and actually make a little campaign around that to get that out into different medias, and then from that have more information sessions and just see what we can do. We have gone out to the schools as well. You may have seen a video campaign, I'm hoping you've seen it, for the trainees and apprentices that we've just advertised for 11 of those, and we did a video campaign around that with the current trainees or people who've been trainees or apprentices within the organisation to try and, I think video does work to appeal to those types of people. The other thing from a recruitment point of view that they've been improving on is we have invested in some different search strategies. So one of those is Seek Talent Search. So it gives us access to anyone who really has uploaded a resume onto Seek on that platform themselves. And so we've been able to proactively, specifically for some of our engineering roles and some of our finance roles, to reach out to people to say, have you thought about a career at Central Highlands? This is the roles we've got. Would you be interested in applying? And we're starting to see some success with those people applying for those roles. Doesn't mean they're guaranteed to get the job at all, but it's just in terms of us trying to make a difference on how we attract those people, because at the moment there's so many jobs available that we're getting a little bit lost, so we need to have a different approach. No other council that I'm aware of is actually doing that. And then if we look at training and development, I've got a couple of slides for training and development. So last quarter they had a huge training quarter. I think there was over 816 training items that they delivered on. This quarter there was 511. I've given you a snapshot of the mandatory training sessions. As you can see, there was a big focus on procurement. Making sure that everyone went through some procurement training, and then we've also got some plant and equipment training that people needed to have as well. And the highlights there, because I always love it when we're growing our own and developing our own talent internally, you know, we had 8 new qualifications across the organisation just in the last quarter. So people with business administration, project management, and even parks and gardens qualifications. So they should certainly be applauded for investing their own time and effort to get those qualifications, which will hopefully see them have a more successful career here at council. And then the verification of competencies, or the VOX as we call it, through the quarter. Now we have an external trainer and assessor that comes up and does those for us, and we're focusing on high risk roles at the moment to ensure that we're making people safe in their working environment. So they were able to do 62 VOCs in that last quarter. That just doesn't include people who might already have that ticket. If someone has some experience but hasn't got that ticket, we're also making sure we're including them there so they get that qualification verified as well. So we're upskilling at the same time. The good news behind that is that we have just hired our own internal trainee and assessor. So we'll have someone doing that on a full-time basis. So those numbers will really increase and will have a dramatic impact on how safe and our employees are in making sure they're in that equipment, but then also the low risk roles as well. And that person is actually an internal employee who's taking this on as a bit of a career change, and we'll give him the right training and support to get him into this position. So that's really exciting. The other piece within the training is the Damstro Learning, which is an e-learning tool. This is a really clever tool that allows us to create engaging and really interactive content. There's nothing worse than e-learning and you're just watching a screen and it's just going past, where this one actually allows you, gives us more opportunity to be creative with our content. And so part of our training strategy is to provide different ways that people can learn at their own pace. And so this tool is one of those. We've launched by reinvigorating our general induction, and we're having everyone go through that. So that number's representative of how many people have gone through that process at this stage. And then I briefly just, wanted to highlight the people and culture team. So we've got 17 people across people and culture, and at the start of every financial year, I like to bring everyone together so we can look at what impact are we going to make and how are we going to make a difference with the organisation. Because if we don't have a goal or a focus, we can't measure that and we can't feel successful. And so while I've brought on some business partners and we've got that approach, I want every single member of our team to have that business partnering mindset. So I have challenged them to what's the difference that they can create within the organisation over the next 12 months. So just to give you a bit of an example, so our payroll team is to simplify things. So especially for our outdoor workers, they have quite complicated timesheets. So how can they simplify that process for them? So over the next 12 months, I want to see what impact that has created. With our training and development team, they want to make it easier for supervisors and managers to see what the training requirements are for their employees. So there's a lot of work going behind the scenes with Technology One. It is a great tool if used properly, and so they've invested the time to look at their training profiles so that every employee knows what are their requirements, what are their training requirements coming up so they can plan appropriately, where at the moment that's actually really hard to find. So that's something that they're working on. The recruitment team is actually to talk more. So some of those information sessions that I spoke about earlier about getting out into the community, but also do internal coaching with our teams. And so for people who are wanting to apply for roles, what support do they need if they need some interview training and skills. We're also looking at perhaps at the next interview information session with the community, we might even roll out how do you put a resume together and actually do some how-to sessions with them. That might actually bring in some more people to get some support, as well as working on their employer branding strategy. And the people and performance team is to be more visual, because they're usually the people that people come and see when something's gone wrong, so we want them to be actually going out and being more visual. So that might be going and being in the toolbox talks or coffee room chats, just to be out there and being more visual. And so our focus is what difference can we make to the organisation. And there's actually one more member of my team that I wanted to highlight, which is the organisational change management. Most organisations go through a lot of change, and so we've got Aaron Jerd, who you may or not know, who's been with the council for sort of 20 years, is leading this role, and this is his passion, is around how we improve change management at council and making sure we've got some rigour around that. So making sure if you're going through a change management process, what is the outcome you actually want and how are you going to get there? Have you got the comms? Have you got the plan in place? And help support them with that change management. So that's one piece. The second piece is making sure from a council-wide perspective is, are we doing too much change? Where's the change fatigue? Because if you've got some teams who are constantly going through change, the change is less likely to be effective. So it's about looking at that from a risk management point of view to go, okay, well, that team's actually just gone through significant change. Does this change need to happen now? Can we wait? And so we're looking at that from that perspective as well. He's working with the safety team at the moment on some of their change management projects, as well as the people and culture team on some of our projects that we've got going on as well. And I forgot to turn the slide, sorry. And then the last thing I wanted just to highlight is the projects that we're working on that are certainly passion projects of mine, is the 90-day onboarding program from our new starters that is a real focus to try and help improve that retention rate of those people that we're bringing on board. So where we're up to with that is we've actually created the framework and the baselines. We're just about to go out to consult with different new starters, anyone who started with us for 12 months, to talk to them about, if you had this, would that have made a difference or what? So that we can then come back and repurpose that and discuss that with the LT and then start looking at rolling that out. We have also relaunched our welcome orientations that went on hiatus through the COVID period. And I think everyone's really quite pleased to see that back. So I'd like to thank the ELT for being involved in that. I know it's a bit of their time, but it could be sometimes the only time an employee may get to meet them. So it's a really good value proposition from my perspective. And the other one is the Supervisor Toolkit, which is going to have a big impact. We have developed a list of content of what we think supervisors, we hear from them, their questions around that we've put together some snapshot of training around, and we're going out at the moment, speaking to different supervisors across the organisation. Is this beneficial? What else have we missed? What would you like to have? How would you like to learn this? We're really mindful that this needs to be purposeful and it needs to be effective. So having the same training strategies for someone who's maybe an outdoor worker who's not used to sitting in a classroom environment, is that going to work for them? So we're hearing their feedback to see how we pull this apart. How I envisage this is starting in February next year when everyone's back from their January leave, and sort of to be hopefully just short, sharp, focused sessions that help them do their jobs. And so that's sort of what we're working on, just to give you an update of where we're up to. And I think that is it for me. If anyone has any questions or feedback, thank you.
I'm going to save you from that for the moment, Tanya, because we've got a morning tea down in the gallery. And if you don't mind, Tanya, if you can force yourself to allow yourself to go for morning tea as well with us. We'll come back at as near as we can to 11. And as long as that doesn't erode your questions, councillors, keep them. You've got them. There will be some questions for you, Tanya, if you don't mind. And sorry for the little bit of a break there. So, Rebecca, I know you've trooped up here as well, but if you can force yourself to have morning tea with us as well in the library, I know your reports are coming after that. So, thank you, Tanya, and we'll come back. We'll adjourn the meeting now. And, councillors, we might come back about 11:10 if we can, and we'll resume the parliamentary inquiry into Tanya's report. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Tanya, for your excellent report. It's really pleasing. I love the way that you're reframing everything in the positive as well, and not to underestimate the impact that can have on building a positive culture as well. So thank you very much. Tanya, I was just going to ask, on the first slide, where you were indicating that the black line, so the black line is an average of other councils, is it?
Through the chair, sorry, the blue line, or it looks like black, going through there, is actually just an indication of last quarter. So see down the bottom where it's got Q4 results with that blue line?
Yep.
That's what it was, just so you can see the difference of how that's changing.
Yep.
And then I've just got the percentages are just saying what that workforce average is for each of those areas, and then I've just highlighted the difference between those. The resource sector, our comparatives is at 2% difference, where it's 9% typically for those other ones. But if you think for next time, I can certainly reference that on there to make that easy to see, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I wasn't sure, because when I was adding up the numbers across the employee numbers, contract and labour hire numbers, I realised that they linked to Q4 last financial year, but I didn't jump to seeing your little icons properly and working out that you actually were reporting on this quarter, this last quarter, and then the previous quarter. So thank you very much for that. And again, I think that actually adding the labour hire is a really good additional statistic as well, just to help build that picture. And interesting that both the contract and labour hire actually adds up to that 7% as well. And I think you answered one of the questions I was going to ask, and I did note also when on the next slide where you were looking at locations, it was interesting that the Springsure, Blackwater and Capella were even numbers of the workforce break-up of where everybody's located. And thank you for explaining what the streams A, B and C were, because I was going to ask about that too, so thank you very much. Also, thank you for explaining the annualised staff turnover, because I was wondering what that figure actually meant. It will be interesting, like you've taken just that first quarter and then multiplied that out to look at a potential staff turnover rate for this financial year. Thank you for that. And also, on the following slide, there was the slide where it has exit reasons, and thank you for explaining. I just noted that the 21 resignations, with 4 being performance management, that's 17. You were saying that you're hoping to find out a little bit more in there. And I think, from my perspective, I think that, everything that you're doing and the organisation's doing, congratulations to senior managers on leading this. It will be building trust, I think, so that people probably feel more easy to engage in that process, which is so beneficial. I loved the idea that you were talking about business partner support. that really resonates with me. And definitely when you were talking about your performance check-ins, it really is about how are we travelling and how are we going to improve whichever way that goes. But it is about having those better conversations with staff. And also, I was going to ask on page 349, which is slide, not sure what slide, but the slide for training and development. With the training sessions, which congratulations on all the different ones that are training sessions that are happening. What is the works / children?
Oh, through the chair, working with children.
Okay, yeah. That's really good that's actually on there then. I wasn't really sure what that one actually meant. The other thing I just wanted to compliment was that the organisation having dedicated resources around that successful change management. And I was happy to hear you actually say that there is a dedicated resource to support especially supervisors and staff to understand that change is continuous, it always happens. And I was also pleased to hear that you mentioned about change fatigue as well. And I couldn't help but think that it's all aspects of change, but it's also about that realistic timeframes around change as well. And again, you're speaking to staff and you're listening to staff, just like we as a council, speak with our community and listen to our community. You're listening to the people who actually can help with improving any aspects of change management. And the only other thing I was going to add was congratulations on all your recruitment strategies, because you are absolutely right. We're hearing it in every quarter or everywhere, I should say, that every organisation certainly has to be ahead of the game to be able to recruit from the seemingly smaller pool of people that we need to recruit. So thank you very, very much for that. My only other suggestion was you mentioned resume writing as part of your information sessions as well. And one thing I did notice working with high schools, probably not so recent now, but was there's also that opportunity when you're in, with careers days with high school students to offer that other little bit of an activity around resume writing, because if they understand that this is what this organisation actually needs me to do to refine my resume writing to meet with to get a better application and a better chance of getting a job at council, that's goes a long way, I think. So I'd just like to say congratulations and everything you're doing, and the senior management team and staff. Thank you very much, because I think all of this great work, your onboarding, your supervisor toolkit, supervisors are that cog that keeps everything going in an organisation. So congratulations. Thank you.
Councillor Brimbley.
Morning, Tanya. Just on your recruitment in Q1, with the new starters, internal transfers, 30 positions filled, with 15 of those, or half of those people being internal transfers, does that then create another vacancy on the bottom line? Sorry. Yep.
Through the chair, it absolutely does. So it does create that loop back in that does increase those vacancies for us. But that's a positive thing as well.
Yes. With the little picture on the side, 40% male, 60%, is that the number of applicants, 60% female, or is that higher?
Through the chair, sorry, that is actually for the new starters. I should reference that. And then I can certainly for next time have a look at the application pool for you.
Okay. No, thank you.
Councillor Burns, Charlie, yeah, Councillor Burns.
I'm just looking through training and development. I see 26 people were ACDC accredited. Is that training Thunderstruck or whatever? I was interested to learn that you only just got an in-house trainer assessor. Was that common practice, or is it just a position that wasn't filled for a while?
Through the chair, that is common practice to have in-house trainer assessors, something that we just haven't had before. So we certainly saw the gap analysis that we did on our training needs analysis as an opportunity to close that gap, and the best way of doing that would be having an in-house trainer assessor.
Yeah, most places have them now, so that's why I was just asking. Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks. And I noticed you didn't answer Councillor Burns' first question, but yeah, it was bound to happen. I just wondered whether most of us had gone past it. Thank you, Councillor Burns, for picking up and taking the opportunity. Councillors, any other questions? The recommendation is there, that obviously, and it is a short recommendation for obviously a significant piece of work, but we're asked there to note, obviously, that update. Someone happy to move that, please? Moved by Councillor Moriarty, seconded Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you very much, Tanya. Thank you for persevering. Hope that voice gets better. Hope the quality of your voice gets better. Thank you. Councillors, and thank you, Beck, for being patient, sitting under Michelle Webster's General Manager, Customer and Commercial Services. I know Becky's here. I'll leave it to Michelle to do the introduction of these couple of records. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, next two reports are in regards to record of proceedings for community consultations that were recently held in Springshaw and in Emerald. So I'll just pass directly over to Rebecca, the Manager of Customer Service, to speak to her reports. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Webster. The first report before you is the record of proceedings from the consultation that was held in Springshaw on the 20th of October after the General Council meeting held earlier in that day. There are a number of actions there that were received through the Have Your Say platform, but that were also discussed at the consultation, which is why they form part of the actions we'll continue to follow up. So I'll hand over to councillors if there are any questions or comments with those minutes.
Thank you, Beck, and I appreciate that format is very much now about recorded proceedings, and it is good that councillors, I guess, get the chance to just make sure that that conversation is recorded well. So, Deputy Mayor.
So, to you, Jason, on the cooling system in the tank in Springshaw, just an update on where you're at with procurement and stuff. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. So, Council has budgeted in this financial year for an upgrade to the cooling system in Springshaw. The tender has been awarded to the successful tenderer. It is expected to be completed by March 2022. So the tender is awarded. They're just in fabricating the components. They'll be brought to site and commence work early in the new year, with completion by March expected at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. Also, just on and this is probably a bit of a question on notice to the street beautification people. So one of the Steves, I believe, John, there's been concern about the footpaths and disability accesses in the street in Springshaw. If it should go in line with the beautification of the street, because we did discuss some footpath and gutters rectification in that, but would it be possible to add this to the beautification, please?
Through the chair, I will double confirm, Deputy Mayor, but I'm pretty sure it already has been. But I will double confirm. I know the preliminary sketches and the detailed design that I saw actually incorporated disability access. There was also a provision put in there for a bus parking area for something that I recall as well. I'm not sure what that was from. There's a little minibus or something that comes to town or from the aged care facility. So that's been incorporated, but I will double check.
Just to keep it, in line with the process. We don't want to see the beautification process be put back because of any works that might be. So through infrastructure, we could possibly probably look at that footpath, further funding and that sort of thing, would that happen as well?
Thank you, Councillor. So we do have a program of improving and replacing some curb crossovers. The general, some of the concerns were around access to shops that won't be able to be taken into consideration in our existing package. Will have to be part of the overall beautification project. But basic curb crossovers and the disabled parking or all accessibility parking facilities increase in town can be done in a staged approach more forwardly.
And I guess just as a general comment, I think for those of us who were attending there, clearly the community are very keen, obviously, to engage with that pool conversation about where we're going. And I know that's a matter that it wasn't. I think they're very pleased that obviously it's a matter the council are considering and constantly considering. But I guess I think that there is an action there that we will meet with them and engage with them. General Manager John, so I guess at some point that'll be one of the key community interests. Yeah.
That was certainly an action out of the CRG, and that's been taken forward, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry,
can
I just add another one? Down in number 11, the Minerva Hills National Park Road Access, at a recent meeting of the Tourism Action Panel over at CHDC, Claire Grant, representative from Queensland National Parks, was on Zoom, and I was asking about the road access and if we'd come to any decisions or finalisation, I suppose, through the Transport Roads Group. Claire actually said that to keep in touch with her because she would like to actually get TMR, Council and National Parks together. So that's another conversation that we can have as ongoing from our conversations in the Road Transport Group. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Councillor Roll. Councillors, the recommendation is there for that record of proceedings, and those CRMs are accordingly not acknowledged there as 1, 2 and 3. Is someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Brimble-Combe, seconded. Councillor Curtis, all in favour? Against? Thank you. Councillors carried. And that rolls through, I guess, to the second record that we're dealing with today.
Yes, the second report before you today is the record of proceedings from the community consultation held in Emerald at St Patrick's School on the 14th of October. We had two attendees at that consultation, Mr and Mrs Kevin and Beverly Bickoff. There was one action that arose from that consultation where General Manager McDougall committed to providing some details on fly-in, fly-out workers, and that's number 9 in the proceedings. That information was provided directly to Mr Bickoff just prior to the finalisation of these minutes. So there are no outstanding actions arising from this consultation. I'll hand over to the councillors for any questions or comments.
Councillors, and you would have noted that I think Mrs Bickoff has written in to us previously about trees as well, which is not recorded in these minutes, but Mrs Bickoff has actually written about some shade trees in previously and advised council. So I'm only just reminding people it's not recorded here. It's not the matter we're dealing with, but I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes it's not about the quantum of people that turn up, it's about the quality of their, I suppose there are concerns they've raised. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, for obviously chairing that meeting. And obviously people had that opportunity of meeting them. So, Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And again, thank you very much to the staff for doing such great minutes as well. And also, just like to concur with the Mayor saying that it's not necessarily the number of people that turn up, but it's certainly the depth of issues raised or items that people would like to find out more information about. I just noted just a couple of comments on item 4 about communications of community events. There was some talk about, at the meeting, some talk about all different types of communication, and we're hearing it from lots of different quarters that it's wonderful that council do a lot of social media and online communications. And just to say that at the recent Positive Ageing Forum, one of the top items that came up was people asking for the whole variety, if there's also the online and social media, but also some of that opportunities for paper-based communications. Exactly as Mr Beckhoff says, there are some demographics, and surprisingly there's some younger demographics that still like to have hard copy and read as well. And lastly, the last item on footpaths. I just noted Mr Beckhoff's great suggestion about linking footpaths from the Opal Street Caravan Park to Woolworths and Claremont Street, Esmond Street. I have actually many a time been walking and seeing people, because I live on Teresa Street, asking directions where to go to Coles or Woolworths because they're staying at the caravan park. But I just wanted to note there that there's that potential to, when council's probably considering any reviews of any parking around sporting precincts, etc., around that particular area, that is potentially a factor in thinking about any planning in that area. And also, interesting thing was that, speaking of footpaths, keeps coming up in most communities around footpaths or active transport networks, I think is the term. But it was noted at the Positive Ageing Forum as well, the opportunity, because it's in sort of a similar precinct, that there's also opportunities to link from Avalon through to the Claremont Street and up to the Woolworths shopping centre as well. If council's looking at having some of that connectivity between footpaths, where there's where we can probably be a bit more strategic with working with that. So it's really just comments to share, and just want to say thank you to Mr and Mrs Beckhoff for coming along and their great contributions to our community consultation. Thank you.
Thanks, councillors. That recommendation is there, that we receive that record. Someone have any move those? Moved by Councillor Moriarty, second Councillor Burns. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Beck. Thank you, Michelle. Arjun is here. Arjun Bloomer, our CEO at Central Highlands Development Corporation. 14.5.1, which is a quarter one update from the 2021-22 operational plan. And I'll hand over the acting CEO to, not that he needs to introduce Arjun, but when he comes all this way to present the report, we should be welcoming him.
I know. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, report before you is the quarterly report presented by the Central Highlands Development Corporation on their operational plan performance for the first quarter ending 30th of September. They four reports each year, with the last one being the wrap-up of the annual, but we'll introduce Mr. Arjun Bloomer, the Chief Executive of the Central Highlands Development Corporation, to provide comment on this.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll go through it and point out some highlights in the under the assumption. Yeah, sure thing. That's love having a Siri on your phone. Answer. I wouldn't say it's just like my wife. I start talking to you when you're not expecting it. But thank you for the opportunity to. I hope she's not watching. Or watching the rerun.
We're getting to that point, I think,
Exactly.
but not quite yet.
But thank you for the opportunity to give some an overview of what we've done in the first quarter of this financial year. And I've also planned in the one-on-one meetings with the councillors who are not on the board of CHRC to discuss some more topics in depth with them. So for those who haven't accepted the invite yet, I would like to take the opportunity to have a look at it. If it doesn't fit, please send me an adjusted invite. If you look at the organisation, I think the last financial year was really about building foundations, and besides doing some great work, focus on policies, procedures and processes. And this year it's about, on top of servicing the business community, it's about really building the capabilities of the team through training and giving them the right tools and methodologies to do their work. So that's internally focused. We always take steer from the business community and what they're actually after. And one of the outcomes from the business survey showed that 1 in 3 of our businesses still suffering from the impact of COVID-19, which is not a surprise, but it gives us direction in where we should focus and help them to be more resilient and to recover. And that includes helping them with grants, but also helping them set up digital distribution channels when it comes to retail, for example. Having said that, 86% of the businesses say and that they're feeling really confident that they will be, their overall performance will increase. And that gives comfort as well, because they see a bright future, and they can clearly express what kind of support they need to actually get there. Having that growth and a increasing performance comes with the biggest challenge for our region, because 84% of our businesses say that issues finding the right staff holds them back in growing their business. So particularly this year, we've put some extra emphasis on that. I joined the Skilling Queenslanders for Work board as in the advisory committee, addressing that and getting the people that are challenged to find roles, getting them up to speed and finding roles. And the same with Mary. She joined an education for Queenslanders advisory committee. So we're pushing hard, harder than we ever did in our organisation. Obviously, the celebration of the Business Excellence Awards was a highlight in this quarter for those who attended or were not able to make it. Unfortunately, feedback has been tremendous. This morning we got the video back, so we're going to put it on our website, but we also used it to go out to the participants. We've got we have 3 surveys that we launched. One is to the participants, one is to the partners, and one is to the people and the business that were actually in the process of the award, and get feedback and see where we can do things better going forward. But the feedback that we got without asking was extremely positive across all three areas. Also, from a finance perspective, we're tracking well against budget. We now have a monthly insight in how we're spending. So we've changed our finance reporting, and we have a monthly overview of the profit and loss, budget, actuals, consolidated budget and consolidated actuals, which gives us a way better way of controlling our budget and reallocating and reprioritizing budget. Because we are not in the business of saving money, we're in the business of spending money, helping businesses grow stronger, and it allows us to start up a few more projects because we know that the savings are coming throughout the year. We've also, and I gave you heads up in the last SLA, all the staff at CHRC have received new contracts, so they're now contracted for a 3-year period all the way up to the end of the financial year 23-24, so 30th of June 24 is the last date, and that gives a lot of comfort to those people when it comes to buying a house and getting mortgages, all the way to job security, which is in our region an issue, but also in our organization, of course. So we've done that. I personally attended the Australian Institute of Company Directors course, which was really useful, given that I'm on a couple of boards and advisory committees, and it helps me as well in providing the board of CHRC with the right insights. Look, I won't go through each and every element of the business and investment attraction, but it does show that there's a lot of priority projects that we are involved in, whether it's the former agricultural college, supporting businesses with the MMI grant, Robotics Australia Group and the Northern Australia Agri-Foods. We're working with property developers and providing them with data about the growth and in the Central Highlands, all the way up to smaller initiatives like a new pharmacy that reached out and who wants to establish a new setup in our region. Obviously, I mean, for those who have seen it, there's a really good report launched by the Queensland Local Content Leaders Network through the CHRC, Queensland Resources Council. It's about local spend and local procurement, and that report is received really well. And we're very proud that we were one of the founding members at CHCC. Initially, it was in our region, but it is now expanded to the council of Toowoomba Council is on board, TSB is on board, and we're really growing that footprint in pushing local procurement really hard. And for those who've read our annual report, we'll also report out on how much we spend locally, which is over 80%. So over 80% of CHCC spend is actually in the Central Highlands community, and we're pretty proud of that. There's some other elements, water resources, situational analysis, BHP work of the future program, things like that, that helps shape the community. There's a little bit in here of in regards to government relations. There's a lot of police coming through the Central Highlands, and we facilitate where we can. And there's also a lot about providing them with information. What are the priority projects, all the way to taking them to the CQ Inland Port and explaining the plans that might be in place for the former Ag College. Let me see, I touched upon that. I did mention the Central Highlands Development Corporation annual report. We launched that during the AGM that we had last week. I sent a copy out to all the councillors, and I'll make sure that the management team gets a copy today as well. It's a good read. It does show, and that it's in line with the SLA report, how we're tracking, what our budget is, all the projects that we have done, and not just the project what we have done, but actually the outcomes that we have delivered and the results that came out of that. A little bit on the Vista Economy. Look, this is about Q1 when it was still busy. Everyone noticed that it's slowing down tremendously. But if you look at the numbers are quite impressive, and it's all drive-through. If you look at, for example, the month of July, 1,800 visitors in July 2019, 1,400 during the peak of COVID, it was 1,400. But this year we're looking at close to 2,400 visitors in July coming through the visitor centres, which is a lot of, like literally a lot of visitors. And luckily we managed to get a few more volunteers on board to help us out because we have days that we have literally 3, 4, 5 people waiting to be served in the visitor centre. So we do what we can to get more visitors in. Having said that, we closed, because the tour season is over, we closed the 3 regional visitor centres, and we're now looking at the data and analysing the data. So how many visitors have they actually served in Jaringa, in Blackwater, in Springshore? And what are the learnings, what are the opportunities to improve on that? And we will present a report after Christmas, initially to our board, but also to council, having funded that pilot, to give you an insight, but also give you an opportunity to make a decision. Do we want to continue with that? And if so, in what format that is. I also added a little bit about souvenirs. Souvenirs is becoming a bigger and bigger revenue stream for us. And we are emphasizing on local produce, getting more local produce in, and we're actually looking to modernize our visitor center a little bit, which is now all about brochures. But if you look at modern visitor centers, it's more sort of a local produce shop / visitor center. So we're trying to find out what that balance is going to be, because currently we're sitting at $25,000 turnover in the visitor center, and we believe that we can easily go through $100,000 based on data that we got from other visitor centers who have a stronger emphasis on selling local produce, local souvenirs, whether it's local jam, chutneys to earrings and whatever they sell. Gemfest obviously was a casualty of the lockdowns. Unfortunately, that was a bit of a challenge, and I believe they have an AGM coming up with now people stepping up. What I understood is that the committee is stepping down from the Gemfest, so we need to come up with a plan how we can support that in some sort of form, because the current committee is stepping down and there's no one stepping in. One of the team members of CHRC is on that committee, also stepping down. So it's really a bit of a concern, because it's the biggest tourism event that we have in our community. Brand strategy continues to be rolled out. We are about to put our signage up in the Central Highlands Marketplace Shopping Centre. They've asked us, and they fund that to put our branding out there, including nice photos and things like that. But certainly, having that ability to have visitors park their caravans there helps them attract a lot of visitors. We have some data where we compare the amount of visitors going through the 3 shopping centres that we have, the Coles, the Old Woolies and Marketplace, and close to 90% goes to that marketplace. And it shows how important it is to be RV friendly. Talking about RV friendly, the 23rd of November, I believe, is the workshop planned with councillors about the RV strategy. We have the final report, but we want to validate some of the recommendations that are in there and give councillors a good understanding of the opportunities that we see across the Central Highlands. There's quite a few. It's a very comprehensive report, and thanks John and his team for contributing so much over the last months and get that done. So we're very keen to have that workshop and present a finalised report. Agribusiness, and this report is written when ACTAC 21 was not yet held, and for those who were there, it was another really successful event. And we were very pleased that we had a sold-out event. We signed up 54 partners / sponsors. So it was more than a self-funding event. We have some budget left that we can put back into that agribusiness community, which is obviously great. Discussions are still going on with a lot of entities like Oz Industry, CQ Smart Cropping, and Local Buying Foundation to build out that Ag Frontier program. And we're awaiting anxiously the outcome of the Robotics Australia Group pitch to get the MMI funding to develop potentially the former Ag College. We also finished our agribusiness regional stocktake that will go into our economic profile. And to give you a little bit of heads up, a lot of the numbers are in line except cotton. Cotton is dropped dramatically, which impacts the economic output for our agribusiness. Probably goes down from a little over $1 billion to 850 million, and that is purely based on the cotton produce, which is related to the availability of water. We have a very simple agri economy, but so that and what we've done is we took the ASL report, which is a renowned organization. We did ground proving, so going to the producers and validate the numbers that they came up with. But we also had a discussion with the DEF chief economist to make sure that we have the numbers right. So we can be 99% sure that the numbers that we talk, when it is beef corridors or any other opportunity, when we talk to politicians, that the numbers that we have on agri are right and correct. And I already mentioned the economic profile. The economic profile is currently with the graphic designer, and we aim to launch that before the end of the year. And that is such a rich document when it comes to data that it gives us a lot of direction of where the world is heading. And it actually is one of the measurements that we have to measure the outcomes of what we do in the region. Business facilitation, which is Mary predominantly been very busy with the Business Excellence Awards, and our Business Excellence Awards is really about two components. One is the lead up to the award night, and that is really working with the businesses and getting their house in order, helping them to understand and create a business plan, a marketing plan, a capability development plan for their staff. It's not just, okay, here's a tick list and who's the best business, but it's actually really aimed at growing that business and making them stronger. That obviously is done, and now we're getting more back to normal, which is a lot of workshops, visits to those business, and one-on-one coaching. It seems like ages ago, the farm to fine dining, but it was in last quarter, believe it or not. 80 guests, very, very high profile decision makers, amazing feedback, and it shows that this is getting better and better in reaching those decision makers and giving them not just literally a flavor of our region, but also connect them and have the opportunities to have very meaningful discussions and help them understand why St. Wilds is so important to the Queensland and to the Australian economy. So we had Mark Furner, we had Stephen Miles, at the time the acting Premier of Queensland, the CEO of Alliance Airlines, CEO of Castle Coal. Well, I've listed a whole list of CEOs that were there, just to give you a bit of a flavor of who were there. And that was obviously a very pleasing to see them and hear how they perceive the event and the value that they get out of that. Board meeting, just a little bit on the board. So we had our AGM last week, which was a bit challenging from a finances perspective, because we didn't have all the information on time from our auditor, but we worked through that. And we're all set up. The board agenda for next year is set, and I think it's really important for council that the agenda for next year, it's 8 board meetings that we hold, but we are going out to the community to have the board meetings there. We have something which we call the chairman's lunch, where we invite businesses for lunch with the board, and we will go out. So we're having board meetings in Blackwater, Springshore, Capella, and the Gemfields, and they're either followed by a chairman's lunch, or we will invite Springshore businesses to join that for that lunch, or by a networking event at the end of the day. And it's important for those businesses to understand what CHDC does, but it's way more important for our directors, particularly to get a really good sense of local businesses outside of Emerald. So we're very happy that we agreed on that agenda. There's some data in the report about our communications. We keep on growing and pushing hard in our socials. We had a new record of 23,500 views around one post on the Central Highlands Business Excellence Awards, which is really great, and I think it shows that we do the right thing in getting more people follow us, and getting and reaching that audience. It does also show that Twitter is sort of dead. We don't see any growth there, so we're slowly moving away from that. When it's an easy thing to do, we include it, but it's really about Facebook and LinkedIn where we get the views, which is great. So those were the highlights that I took out of this report, and I just want to say I'm extremely proud of the team of CHCC, because as the board acknowledged last week, this was arguably one of the biggest years that we had, and the way we started this financial year, the first quarter, doesn't show any signs of slowing down. And like I said, I'm extremely proud of the team delivering these great outcomes for these businesses. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Arjun. That's a terrific amount of information you've provided there. And I know it's difficult to restrict yourself to highlights, because it was an extraordinarily busy period of time. And as you rightly point out, everything's important. And we have been particularly mindful of certainly, responding to, I guess you'd say, COVID circumstances with the initiative we took between ourselves and the Central Highlands Development Corporation. And I do think the businesses have really responded well to that. The fact that we are interested in what's happening, and the lead that certainly the organisation takes in certainly trying to influence, the conditions that make our businesses work better. And you're entitled to be very proud of your team from that positive feedback from at least the business awards, where you had record numbers and record people, and you really showcased it really well. And I think importantly that for businesses right across the Central Highlands now understand that we're a big economy here, and we're all important parts of it. So congratulations to you. But I'm sure there'll be questions. Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much. I just want to say congratulations again on your excellent report. And it was very difficult, I imagine, to be pulling out all of your highlights.
Yes, yeah. No, yes.
Because there's, as the Mayor rightly says, there's lots to be proud of. So well done, congratulations. And I also want to say congratulations on the initiative for the board to go out to the different communities to allow those business to connect with those local businesses and give them the opportunity to meet with the board themselves, because those kind of events and going out in the communities to actually go to go to them rather than always expecting them to come to you. That's a great strategy to connect with those businesses. And as you quite rightly said, when you're talking about your business awards, it's about connecting with the businesses and then helping them build that business acumen, because that then flows on to a whole range of benefits for communities in having better employers and employee experiences, as well as customer service experiences, which then also builds that community vibrance as well. I also wanted to say congratulations and thank you very much for contributing to Council's operational plan as well. Obviously, in our operational plan, we have aspects in there about economic development for the region. So I just want to make sure and say thank you very much for that, because it's about building the whole picture about how Council invests in a whole range of things to report back to the community once a quarter. So thank you very much for that. My first question is on, I see in here that, you know, when you're talking about building staff capacity, it's interesting that you've got a project management workshop and Council's just had a staff attend a project management workshop. Were you guys all together?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Because I was like, I think I've drawn some dots there. So
no, we are
wonderful.
We are very efficient in how we spend our dollars.
Yeah. Good Council. Thank you. And also, I think it's a great idea that you guys have been able to have that financial security that your staff, to give them those bit longer term contracts. I've worked in an environment where there's been, those shorter term contracts, and 3 years is really good. Like, it's still short, but it's good.
Yeah.
Also, I noted with the biogenerational project, it's been a long time since I've studied environmental sociology, but when I was, there was certainly a great emphasis on the whole world, the whole nation is in this particular transition of the current jobs that we have, but moving into, we always called it green industries, and what employment and how much employment is going to happen in that transition. I was just curious that, which I thought was fantastic, that you're actually CHDC in the discussion with the project proponents to determine how other regions have captured data regarding organic waste. So that just made me think that you would be obviously capturing some environmental measures to help build cases around emissions and cost reductions, etc. But I was just wondering if you were also adding in there employment numbers.
To an extent we do.
Yeah.
In general, CHRC is more and more becoming a data-driven organisation. So not just to make our own decisions, but also providing that data. Part of why we requested an uplift in the budget is to be able to have access to that data, so we can give that to investor businesses, things like that. We do look at employment, and we start building on that, and that also comes with the new roles that I took on and that Mary took on in the Fitzroy region. Fitzroy Basin region, because we need that data. So a lot of the initiatives that we are working on, and there's a list in here, but there's a bigger list that we work on. We have started measuring the future impact on jobs. So if there's an initiative on an aged care facility or a childcare facility, we are now started to collect the data, and we're not there yet that we can say, okay, here it is, because you have to start somewhere, but we will collect, we are in the process of collecting that data so we can say, this is coming, this is the number of jobs. So when we talk about CQ England Port, we have discussions with them. If there's potentially a fuel storage, we know how many jobs and we know what types of jobs they are. So 200 jobs, 40 apprentices, that sort of data. We start collecting that, and it's also part of our, and we will launch our development register in February, and that will include all the priority projects that we focus on. And those priority projects have the element of positive impact on our, from an employment perspective on our region.
Yeah, and excellent, because it's the data that we need, but also as just, my question really too was around, and you're obviously collecting the data, but was it really around having that data as well to support any industries that are looking to move more into that greener energy space, and exactly as you say, have that data there to support and help build the picture, because obviously we're on that longer term transition globally. One thing I really was very, very happy to read in here, and you actually spoke about it as a highlight as well, was the souvenirs. It's always an interesting thing when people are wanting to access souvenirs to visit the region, but also when you want to go somewhere and take souvenirs with you. What you guys are sitting on there, and as you rightly say, we're opening up this opportunity for a whole range of arts and culture and bespoke type businesses to be able to use the Visitor Information Centre as a physical shop front. Are you also providing through the Visitor Information Centre or CHDC that opportunity for them to also link with their websites potentially, or as start-up businesses even use your website as their online front shop?
We don't, and I don't think that we should move that way, because we need to be agnostic. We offer everyone the opportunity to sell. Through, for local producers to sell through the, not fresh produce and stuff like that, so not all local produce, but to sell through our Vista Information Centre. But I don't think that having a website linkage on our website is the right way forward.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. I've seen that strategy used several times as an important economic development, you know, especially when there's downturns as well. But the other question which I wanted to ask was really around, in finality, really around that skills shortage, and what are you seeing as the major initiative that we need to be doing as a region, or businesses need to be doing at a business level or even a regional level? How do we work together to address that skill shortage and that attraction? Hopefully we can retain, but it's that attraction to, I know council as an organisation, speaking about how this organisation has to work hard to put themselves ahead of. What are you seeing as?
I don't think there's. I don't think it's one solution. I think it's a combination of, and one of the things that we see is very successful is having career nights. CHRC organised a career night with and connected with all the schools in Central Highlands, and from a little bit from outside Claremont as well. We had and that was focused on a career in agri. There's this misunderstanding that if you're in agri, that you're walking around with a shovel or riding a horse all day. And we had 250 participants that night. It was so easy. I'm not sure if any one of you managed to get there. And we managed to get the children and parents as well, because parents are often, the decision makers, or at least the influencers in the decision makers. So we do a lot of career night and showing the opportunities. And I think there's one of the biggest opportunities we have is not just attracting career, talent into our region, but having them stay here in our region. So we have pitched, for example, with JCU and with CQU to have that education center for the health industry here in Emerald. So our nurses are actually trained here, live here, and even if 1 in 5 stays, that would make a tremendous impact. So it's about retaining your talent. I think if you want to sum it up, I think retaining our talent, that's where we have the biggest opportunity, because we have a lot of talent. If you see the children that were at AgTech 21 who want to pursue a career in the agribusiness, if we can keep half of them in our region and work in AgTech, then that would be an awesome achievement. So I think retaining is the biggest challenge.
Yeah. And sorry, just one final comment. I know that we've had discussions too about the impacts of opening up as a state with COVID, and I couldn't help but think that when you're talking about businesses now and everybody, with the announcements that basically if people aren't double vaxxed and having that they're restricted from going into businesses or nightclubs or hotels or whatever it might be, I just couldn't help but think that to support businesses, I guess, to go through that kind of experience is we're always encouraging people around customer service and getting more people in, but it's a different equation, isn't it, when people have got to be able to say no to some people coming in. I just think that that's going to be a big challenge for our businesses going forward in the short term.
It is, and we've reached out to businesses offering support, and we don't know yet what that support looks like. I think the biggest challenge is how do you actually check, and how do you deal with people who push back on that. But it's I don't want to end up in discussion in vaccination or should we not doing it or doing it. But we've reached out. We need to understand if there are challenges first, and I anticipate that businesses will reach out. How do I deal with that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
All right. Right, councillors, that's the Quarter 1 update. Thank you very much, Arjit. Appreciate that very much. A lot of information there. The recommendation is there. We received that. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Bill, second by Councillor Carpenter. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Councillors, general business. Anyone has any? All good?
Just one,
Yep,
Mr.
sorry.
Mayor. I would just like to say last night or yesterday evening, it was just the absolute pleasure. In fact, going back to what Father Trook was saying this morning about sharing grace and being graceful, it was just a delight on many levels to go to Comet last evening with the community launching their Comet Tails and walking trails, and also their little red library book exchange. So two absolutely amazing initiatives that the community were involved in, and it just goes to show that when councils invest in a range of community development type initiatives, particularly under with the community reference groups, I guess, that in itself really is community governance, community development principles initiative, that a little bit of investment has an enormous multiplier effect. When we heard of the hours and years and resources that that small community put into celebrating and concluding those two beautiful projects that are not just a celebration of their history, it's an opportunity to showcase their history to the rest of us in the region as well as visitors to the region, and just that opportunity to have a lovely spot where community continue to come together through exchanging books in an online age as we're in. I just wanted to say congratulations to the Comet community for, I think, the 8 or 9 years that they put many, many hours in and worked collaboratively with council and a number of their local businesses as well. It was a beautiful example of community development, and also I think congratulations to council for working with communities to support those kind of projects that are happening right across the region. But congratulations to the Comet community.
Thanks, Councillor Moriarty. All right. Any other general business, councillors? Councillor Carpenter. I think you were on, yeah.
I just wanted to ask a question of Michelle, if I could, please. It piqued my interest this morning when you said 229% of the value of that property in Jiringa would need to be spent on the improvements to it if the sale didn't go through. What processes have we got now to reduce that percentage so that we've got those houses more up to, more updated and not have such a big backlog in costs for repairs and maintenance, I guess, which seems to me to be what was lacking in the first place. That's got it to that point. Yeah. It's just, I'm just talking generally, but that particular instance this morning was what piqued my curiosity.
Sorry, Councillor, I missed the first part. The 229%, which is the estimated cost of that's 229% of the. Yep, the repair to.
Yeah, of the value
repair
of
to
the
house.
I mean, that's out of control for anyone, and I was just wondering what processes we've got now that reduce that percentage hugely.
Yep, thank you, Councillor. As you're aware that, you know, a number of properties were in condition when we came together as an amalgamated council. Unfortunately, annual budgets have not kept pace with the amount of money that is required, and that's been highlighted through the asset condition report that was undertaken on staff housing as well as community housing. And you'll also be aware that we then move forward with a program, a 3-year rolling program to dispose of a number of the aged assets because it's not economically viable for us. Do you mean they are in the state that they are? We can't go back. But primarily your question is around going forward, and you'll also be aware that council in resolving to dispose of a number of houses over that 3-year program, that part of that resolution is that those proceeds will also be used to fund some new staff housing. At the present time, we've now disposed of 13 aged houses which in my calculation has netted approximately around 1.64 million. There will be a report presented to Council in your strategy and briefing forum in December, is scheduled for that, to have a conversation with councillors in regards to how we appropriate that money, the type of housing that we will provide in, certainly in areas like Doringa, Springshaw, those types of things. My team will be having discussions with general managers, all the departments of communities and certainly infrastructure in regards to what is that need. So as an example, in Doringa, so we have sold some of the houses, but what do we replace that with? Do we replace that with units? Do we replace that with, there's a portion of camps, but then do we replace that with, for example, a 3-bedroom home to attract families to the communities? So currently we have $400,000 in the existing CAPEX budget for housing. And we're working forward. We have undertaken a tender for what originally we're going down a path of 2 jet collectors on some vacant land in Doringa. Those tenders have come in well in excess of the budget appropriation. We're now looking at possibly changing that to a 3-bedroom type home. And I suppose it's that conversation that we will now have with Council going forward in regards to the budgets that are required, and we have, as a department, provided you reports in regards to what it costs us to maintain community housing as well as staff housing, and the budget appropriation based on a renewal process, and Councillor Rolfe rightly made those comments yesterday when we were considering, some discussions around budget review, that I suppose we have to put forward these cases to Council to endeavour to seek the type of funding that we need to maintain them to the level that we have. Or I suppose alternatively, looking at other alternatives in regards to how do we provide housing for our staff, as well as, the housing we require and need to maintain for the community as well. So I'm not sure if I've exactly answered your question, and please say so if I haven't, but we have limited funds, and Council's also been made aware of the type of funding that would be required to bring them up to standard, and they're all competing factors, so there is only so much budget allocation that we are provided.
Yeah, I don't think you have quite answered it in my mind, but that's okay. I'll wait for the strategy and briefing. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's the appropriate place. I think, Councillor Carbon, I think in general business, it's general items of a general nature, and if it's going to come back as an item, we'll get the opportunity of having a good discussion about it in that place. And I think, this is a work in progress. We've given some direction, and the question I'm asking are good, because I think it goes to, real basics rationale behind what we're trying to do and the achievement we're trying to make out of the plan of housing more broadly. And I think it's a big item. It's a big issue. So we'll deal with it then. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. All right. Any other general business? All good. Well, councillors, it's 12:16. I'll thank everyone. Thanks. Started well with Father Trook, and he's got his photograph. That might set a precedent. I don't know. We'll be doing this regularly, but we'll have to set something up. But look, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Executive Leadership Team. Thank you, Acting CEO. Thank you, councillors. We'll declare the meeting closed at 12:17 p.m. Thanks.